My name is Alice Viken Wilson, and I am one of the project coordinators at the ADA project NTNU. This project aims to increase the amount of women that graduate technology studies at the Faculty of Information Technology and Electronics. Besides this, I'm also a student. I'm currently finishing my 5th year in informatics, where I'm researching gender equality and tech entrepreneurship, which makes this session very interesting for me. The theme of this stage session is investing in the future, which will assess how investment is crucial for job creation, but also how it often works as a barrier, especially regarding diversity. I am delighted to be joined by Thea Messel on stage today. Thea is the founder and general partner of Unconventional Ventures, an early-stage VC fund which backs purpose-driven and scalable startups. I hope you all enjoyed this session. Welcome, Thea.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Alice, and the whole team of Trondheim TechPort. I have to say, though it's been a while since there's been live events, this is really impressive and to some extent very overwhelming. So very much looking forward to the session we're going to have today. I'm going to give you a lot of data, a lot of numbers, things that we know investors like. And after that, we're also going to have a panel to discuss in depth some of the things that we just relieved. So today, what we're going to talk about is what is the unleashed potential of the Norwegian ecosystem. And I'm going to show you today, there's quite a lot. What we know is that data and numbers are what's steering us and how we are actually taking decisions. And one of the reasons why I started Unconventional Ventures back in the day was because I became more and more understanding of some of the challenges that we even have in the Nordic ecosystem. And particularly what we're going to focus on today, the Norwegian. I come from Unconventional Ventures, an early stage venture fund. And what we invest in as a primary starting point is diverse founders. We invest in pre-seed and seed stage, particularly with impact at the core, because we truly believe that that is the future. Because we in the Nordics always brave ourselves of being the front runners on equality, what became quite clear for me, and also for my partner, Nora Baby, on the picture there, is that there's tons of opportunities, tons of ideas, and tons of ambition that we, even in the Nordics, are currently overlooking or underestimating as enormous growth opportunities. So that's why we started Unconventional, and that's why we can see now that there's a whole shift in the industry really targeting those kind of founders that we haven't typically seen getting funded or creating scalable companies. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers. So I kind of made sort of like a cheat sheet in the sense of what are the key numbers that we're going to conclude today. And if you want to take one picture of the data, these 2 slides are the ones that you should remember. And I'm also going to have to prepare you. It's going to be a bit depressing. I'm Norwegian myself, and I always, though I don't live in Norway, I always am very, very proud of being Norwegian, proud of what we accomplished as a small country up in the north. But some of these numbers are going to give that a real punch today. Less than 1%. That's the capital that went to female founders in Norway in 2020. 2/3 and 1/5. That's the difference between the average of what a female founder company compared to a male founder company receive at seed stage, average round size, and at Series A stage. 5 and 1%. 5%, and this is not only for Norway, this actually goes for Europe in general. 5% of the venture funds we have in Europe is founded by women. And if you add on to the capital part, that's 1%. But then on the flip side, some of the good stuff that we're going to talk about, plus 45%. That's the outperformance of female-founded companies. Plus 73%, that's a higher probability for female-led companies to actually have impact at the core. And what we're facing now as a society and as a planet, we know that all of us want to fund and accelerate these impactful companies. And then the last cookie in the drawer, 2.8x. That's the outperformance of diverse fund managers. So let's dive in. Let's take a deep breath. We're going to end on a high. We're going to end on some prosperous and positive outlooking. But we need to go through some of the hard parts. If we look at the Nordics and the venture capital that went to the Nordics in 2020, around 7-8% went to female co-founded or all female founder companies. That's surprising, being the Nordic region, the most equal region in the world. But what is even more depressing is this number. That was Norway in 2020. In all fairness, Norway did better in the 2019 report. So these numbers go up and down. Norway is not always underperforming in the Nordic setting, but last year we did. Sweden did slightly better, but in general, and the big surprise is actually Denmark for 2020, because Denmark has been actually living below the European benchmark for many years. But when we look at the bigger countries in Europe, we're actually, as a Nordic region, and as a Norwegian country, we're also underperforming to France, to Germany, to the UK. The UK has obviously been a little bit more advocate when it comes to diversity and funding and diversity in general, but a bit surprising about Germany and France. So that's sort of the status quo for the 2020 numbers. And then you can say, well, maybe there's just not enough female founders then. I mean, then we just need to increase the pipeline, engage women in creating companies. But that's not only the problem. The problem is also, you probably heard about salary negotiations and that women are said not to negotiate hard enough. Some of the challenges that we're seeing, what we call the female founder penalty, is that female-led companies tend to get 1/3 or 2/3, depending on the stage I'm looking at, of the capital in each round. And what that means, and this goes for the same for Norway, what that means is that female-led companies actually get less capital to do the same amount of pivoting, of testing, the same amount of hiring in order to actually get their product out there, get it sold. So it's kind of like you're asking for a service, but you're paying 1/3 to one of the partners. Obviously, this is a huge challenge. These numbers is not a snapshot. This is taking over a period of 6 years. And unfortunately, it hasn't changed, even if we look at the snapshot for 1 year or over a longer period. If we dive a little bit more into what does that actually look like in the different stages, maybe it's just because of time that there hasn't been enough diverse-led companies led by women. So when we look at the seed stage, again, this is the Nordics, we can see that female-led companies are getting a little bit less. However, diverse mixed teams are actually getting more. So that's the light turquoise, that's the mixed teams. So there's some interesting signs here of improvement, and as we all know, diverse team outperform. And actually in the seed stage, that is starting to reveal. Not as revealing in Norway yet though, so we still have some things to learn and some things to change in the ecosystem. And also, we could see that the average deal sizes are slightly smaller than on the Nordic level. However, when we move down or upwards, depending on how you view it, for the majority of the companies, when they grow and the rounds are getting bigger, the differences are increasing more and more. So this is the overview of the Nordic numbers. And if we go to Norway, damn, we have even more challenge. But if we go on to the flip side in terms of what do we do about this and why can't we see more and more investment going in that direction? There are some interesting signs, not only from a financial perspective, but also from the type of companies that we want to invest in going forward, giving the argument for why should we invest more diverse. This is a survey of what kind of companies has been created, and what we can see is that female-led companies are 73% more likely to be impact companies. And with impact, they relate to one of the SDGs at the core. So not like a nice add-on positive impact, but something that the more the company grow, the more positive impact for people or planet, or both, the company will have. So what this is really interesting about is we know more and more investors want to invest more purpose-driven, more into climate, more into solution that is making a better world for all of us. And also because we know those problems are so big, we also know that the opportunity for getting your money back is even bigger. In addition to that, if we dive into the performance, we can see that there are some great arguments and some investors also moving in that direction and actually seeing that there's good business, also in a financial perspective. 2.5x, many of you have probably heard about a famous survey done by BCG some years ago, proving that actually female-led companies were 2.5x more efficient on the dollar invested compared to their male peers. We did a similar analysis, but on the Nordic level. And what we could see was that female-led companies in the Nordics was 45% more efficient on the dollar. So there's also an outperformance in the Nordic region. And then we have the 2.8x, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the investors afterwards. But one of the very interesting things about the 2.8x is that this is a survey looking into what are the people actually deciding what to invest in. And what we could see there is that the more diverse the investment teams, those who are actually taking decisions on the investments are, the more performance for the funds. So as you can see, there's a full circle. If we can get more diversity in the way we invest, in how we invest, into whom we're giving the money to invest, we are going to see a change in terms of who get funded and how. So when it comes to the 45% outperformance in the Nordic region, this was probably one of those areas that when we presented the 2.5x some years ago, we only had the global numbers. So every time we were talking to Nordic investors, we would always be kind of shut down. Well, that's global numbers. Do you have numbers for the Nordics? Because that can't possibly be the case. Now we do. And for most investors, having a 45% outperformance is definitely something that we would like to get our hands in. But one of the very important things that we need to look into are actually who are the decision makers. And the reason why this is so important is because we know from research there's a strong correlation between who invests and who actually receives the funding. We did an analysis where we correlated what type of partner composition was on the funds, how many companies had they invested in, and we could see that correlation was apparent not only globally, but also in the Nordics. So it is alive and kicking here as well. If we look at some overview of the type of funds, we could see that 5% of the funds in Europe, so we don't have Nordic numbers for this, but we have it on a European level. 5% of the funds that are being only female-led are GPs. If we add on mix to that equation, we get up to a total of 22%. So 15% funds today are mixed gender-led, giving us 78% for the all-male-led funds. But then again, if we look at the asset under management, we can see there's some challenges there as well. So even though we have 5% of the funds being female-led, we only again have 1% of the assets under management being female-led. And I don't know if you remember the previous slide that I showed you where we looked at capital versus rounds. This is actually not the identical slide. These slides are actually showing very different numbers. On the left side, let me see if this is the right one. No, on the right side, on the right side we have the capital versus the rounds. On the left side we have the GP, number of GPs, and we have the asset under management. And interestingly enough, these graphs are almost identical. So besides us actually having the research showing that there is a correlation, the more diversity we have among the investment decisions or decision takers, we will have more diversity in who is receiving the funding. And at the same time, there's a correlation between how much funding is actually being allocated according to diversity, and also what is the diversity of the GPs. So when we look at the way forward, the way we see it is the keys to change here is really the investors. The investors and the investors into the investors. One thing is educating yourself as an investor, understanding how is my organization set up, how are we dealing with our deal flow, who actually, at the end of the day, have the decision power to say yes or no to an investment. We know that the more diverse check writers we get, the more diverse the portfolio actually will become. We should fund more diverse fund managers because that ultimately will change the way that the capital is allocated. And at the end of the day, and this is a very easy place to start actually, is if we start actually collecting our data and report on them, we get much more enlightened on how our processes work and actually what we potentially can do differently. So just to add up, the negative slide, that hopefully going to look very different very soon because of the next slide. 1%, 2/3 going down to 1/5 when it comes to the capital versus the rounds. But on the positive side, there is enormous alpha out there. If we just manage to invest in more diverse companies, we will see a more sustainable future, and we will ultimately receive more return on investments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't think I'm the only one that finds these numbers shocking, and it's so important you put them on the agenda.
Thank you.
So you were talking about how important the decision makers are when funding startups. So can you think of some reasons why we have this considerable lack of female investors?
It's a big question, and there's a lot of answers and factors. One thing is obviously, if you look at the tech industry, lacking the diversity as it has traditionally, you also have a lot of capital, exited capital, that obviously is not diverse. So going back to who are actually the check writers, and particularly when we look at early stage funding, there's a historical reason for why we don't have more angel investors, for instance, being more diverse. The good thing is that there's this new wave of interest for investments, and that doesn't only go for startups, but it also goes for investing in equities. And I think Norway is probably one of those countries where there's been the most focus on that lately. And the more of these initiatives, also founded typically by women, engaging more women in investing, that's going to change. Obviously, we still need the capital to be invested. So as long as we do not have enough diversity among those who actually have private risk capital to invest, it's going to be a challenge in terms of not breaking that cycle. I see positive ways, but we still need to find a way how we can leapfrog the wealth gap in terms of getting more diversity in the investment space, particularly early stage.
Thank you. What can the government do to encourage more women to invest?
Oh, yeah, that's also a big question. Well, the government is doing quite a lot already. I think going back to what kind of structures do we have in terms of how the capital is allocated, I think the government, depending on what kind of institutions we're looking at, have a responsibility in becoming more diverse, not only in the way they invest, but also who they invest. So I think schemes that are targeting particular groups that have not been invested before, that's going to create a ripple effect, that's going to be positive. And also, I'm quite fond of, there's a lot of the international VCs who are starting these kind of angel programs. So they typically take experienced entrepreneurs and actually give them money to invest in pre-seed. I think that's a very, very interesting model, and I think government money could potentially be an interesting route for that. But we can probably discuss that with someone later on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thea.
Thank you.
Now we're going to continue this session with a panel discussion, where the theme is diversity and sustainable growth. How do Norwegian investors invest for a more inclusive and sustainable tomorrow? The panel will be moderated by Thea. And with us today as panelists, we have Terje Eidesmo, CEO of Investinor, Margrethe Markussen, CEO of Tidligfasefondet, and Kjersti Reinsnos, Managing Director in Equinor Ventures Europe. So Thea, the panel is yours. I will give you 1 minute to introduce yourself. We can start with you, Terje.
Yes, Terje Eidesmo, CEO of Investinor. We are the largest VC investor in Norway. We own directly in 70 companies, indirectly in 400 through 45 funds that we have invested in. We invest from basically idea to growth. So we have a wide range of companies and challenges, as you can understand.
Margrethe, do you want to continue?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Margrethe Markussen, and I'm the leader of Tidligfasefondet. And the Tidligfasefondet is a pre-seed fund which invests in very early stage companies. When they're a thought in the head or just has a prototype or something. And we go in with limited amount of money, and we are very often matched with the Innovation Norway funds. And behind the fund is 20 investors and 3 banks, and we are collaborating very closely with 3 excellent incubators, which is T-Lab, Proneo, and 6am.
Wonderful. Kjersti, you want to give us a short intro as well?
Thank you. So my name is Kjersti Reinsnos, and I'm the Managing Director in Equinor Ventures Europe. And we are the corporate venture arm of Equinor. And we support startups with innovative technologies or business models that we hope are going to change the future of energy. We can invest very early, pre-seed, seed, or later rounds. And what we do is we come in with capital, knowledge, and commitment. And we are helping or supporting the companies to bridge the gap from a very early startup to become successful companies.
Thank you for that, Kjersti. I have to say, though, just seeing the numbers that we just revealed and actually have a panel where you're very underrepresented, Terje.
Yeah, I am.
Isn't that nice? It's a very good start.
I'm feeling the pressure.
No, but let's dive into it. So, and thank you all for agreeing to participate in this. Obviously, I'm going to try and be neutral, though I think all of you know my position on this. But Terje, let's start with you, as the only man in the group here. Mm-hmm. Being the largest LP in Norway, could we say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And being also probably one of the active direct investors in Norway, what is sort of your immediate reflections of what we just revealed?
The immediate is this is not good enough. So we have to do something with this. And for us in Eidesmo, we are. And in fact, you can see the results also. If you focus on the task, you can achieve a lot. And what we have done, and I can also give some numbers. You had a lot of numbers here. So we have the last 5 employees, 4 out of those were women. Mm-hmm. And they were the best candidates. So in that way, we succeeded. Mm-hmm. The reason was that we were very focused on putting together the right ad so that we triggered the right applicant. Sorry for the English. And we got the right people into the system, and that's why we also got the best employee. And that was women. So we have increased the number of women in our organization, and I think the result of that is the focus work we have done. And it has been focused from the board through the management and to the people that were hiring the people. So I think it's possible, but you have to think in a different way.
Mm. And going to you, Margrethe, because you're actually representing a very small group, not only in Norway, but in general, being a female fund manager and the CEO of Tidligfasefondet. How is your immediate reflection on this, and how do you see the startups and the pipeline of diverse startups going into Tidligfasefondet?
Yeah, well, I've been working on this issue for many years with getting more women into finance, overall finance. So I think we need to start with the universities. And I've been talking to students and trying to encourage the girls to apply for finance, for technology, and also to be brave when it comes to entrepreneurship. Mm. But I think that's changing now, because I see in the School of Entrepreneurship, which we have a lot of companies coming out of, and we invest in them, we have quite a few women there actually. So it's getting better.
And can you reveal, have you invested more diverse lately, or how is actually your portfolio looking? Can you reveal something about that?
Oh, it's really embarrassing actually.
Sorry to put you on the spot. It's all about reporting and making it more transparent so we all can learn and improve.
Yeah, that's true. In our portfolio, we have 14 companies, and 2 of them has female founders. Mm-hmm. And among our owners, there are 1 woman, so very bad. But we have. I'm the managing director, so that helps. And the leader of our board is a woman. So I think we're changing the mindset a little bit.
Wonderful, that's exciting. And Kjersti, I mean, you've actually been working quite a lot in very male-dominated industries all over, and now you're actually in Equinor, and in startup and in tech. How do you see, when being a global company, having the muscles of a global company to invest in the future, what is your immediate reflection on these numbers, and how does that reflect on how you invest?
Good and difficult question. So Equinor is quite a male company. If you think about the energy sector, working in a platform, working in oil and gas has been for many years very male dominated. Mm. The same with the ventures, it's a very male world. But in Equinor there's a great effort to increase the number of women, to monitor the numbers, but not just gender diversity, but also diversity of thoughts, diversity of background, diversity of experience, and that's something we are measured on and something we report on. when you go to ventures on our investments, we haven't yet started monitoring or reporting on the numbers. I had an interesting talk with Thea a few weeks ago. It's like, no, we don't do that. And then I was, and took it to my leadership team. And I went, yeah, that's something we should think about doing. So that's back to your slide, Thea, with what do you do to improve? And the first point you had was to educate venture investors. And we are being educated. And to be invited here today was a great awareness and education for me. And we do have companies in our portfolio with female founders. We have one company called Fenicia, 2 founders, one male and one female. I think a company with great potential. And also what I noticed some time ago, a team member came to me and said, oh, I have this company in the pipeline. It's a female founder. And I said, yeah, that's great. So that you start thinking about that as something positive. And of course we think about it as positive. You see the numbers you shared. So I think today, to invest in a company with a female founder, the likelihood of success is, as you showed, higher.
And actually, being a bit of a brand or giving that extra awareness, Margrethe, we also discussed that earlier, and that's also in sense of how female founder company or female founders present their companies, that there could actually be some extra potential. Can you share with us a little bit about how you review those decks that you've received and how you actually see that extra potential when there's a female founder pitching to you?
Yeah, I think it's a lot better if I prefer mixed teams, actually, because I think if you have only men or only women, that's not the best team. You should have both. And but if you have women, many times actually they are not thinking big enough. So I encourage them to think, you can reach the skies here. Just look up. So, but they're a bit more, they're not as forward as many of their male colleagues. So, but that doesn't mean they're as good. Often they're better. So even though they are not so forward as their male colleagues, they're better. So it's, yeah, you just have to see them.
Yeah. And we actually discussed that as well, Kjersti, that because of the capital distribution being the way it is, there is actually this extra alpha opportunity right now. Hopefully it's not going to stay that way. What is your perspective on that?
I think that's a good point. So with such a small pool with women, and I think probably this little pool is with the excellent women. When the pool increases, the likelihood that there will be more, maybe not so excellent founders there is higher. So probably now is a very good time to invest in startups with female founders.
Because they have such extra obstacles. So, you know, it's extremely difficult with it, or high with it. Well, Terje, now we're talking about women and men, and obviously that's a small part of the equation when we're talking about diversity. Unfortunately, we don't have the numbers when we look at diversity beyond gender. GDPR has made it a little bit more difficult for us to map these data. What is your perspective in terms of also increasing the pool and the investments into diversity beyond gender? What are the potentials that we can unleash there?
Yeah, I think for us it's diversity in a broad sense that's important. And it has been mentioned here, both the gender, as you say, which is easy to measure, but also background, different background, age, and then background, not only different countries, but education, all that. I think putting together a group of people that have different skills, have different views, that will generate a much better team. It's like having a football team of only Holland. That would be a terrible team, even though he's the best player in the world. It will not be a good team. Everybody understands that. So I think diversity in the broad sense is important for us, and I think we will make better decisions. And for us, for instance, working on venture investments, it's an evaluation. You cannot calculate and get the answer. You have to do, okay, is this a good investment or not? Then it's very nice to have a person, doesn't have to be a woman, to ask the question all the rest is not asking. And that is what you gain by by bringing different skills and different cultures into a group. So, and that is our target. And then, of course, I'm focused on the women also, but that's just part of it.
And I know you've been working quite extensively on this for a long time now, being quite progressive, I must say, for a government funding institution. Have you started to see the results of that hard work yet?
Not really outside Invest Norway. You can see it in Invest Norway, of course, and you can see it on the names on the list. And I also think you can see it on the way we are working and the way we are interacting. But I think this is a long-term type of activity. So we are doing our share, and then we have to have some help from others. So all have to carry this together. And it will take time to change. So I think you will see the change, but we have to do what we can do, and the rest have to do what they can do to add up, and in the end that will help us being better. So.
Yeah, because it's not a quick fix. I mean, even with you, Margrethe, you only have one company in the portfolio so far, even though there's female-led. So how do you work with this internally? You mentioned that you had 20 investors today, and only one of them being women. How can we actually make that change full circle from your perspective?
I think we have to focus on it and encourage the teams to include women, because we meet the founders when they're founding companies, and then we can talk to them. And I always say I prefer mixed teams. I don't like male or female teams, so please mix. And in the School of Entrepreneurship, they can do that. So I think that's helpful. And also we can look for the women and the female entrepreneurs. And they might get some help in the incubators, I think, to move forward. That's a part of the ecosystem.
And Kjersti, I know you've been in different parts of the how do you say, finance value chain, and now starting into venture and with a very important industry that need to change. When we saw the numbers of 73% of actually diverse teams are more likely of creating, what reflection does that give you in terms of how Equinor is going to do in venture investments going forward?
So you mean diverse team in companies or in the teams, investment teams?
Both, maybe.
Yes. So in our teams, there are more men than women. But I have recruited several times, and when I see the list of applicants, there are almost only men there, very, very few women. And that, I think, is a pity. And I don't really understand, where are the women? Why are they not applying? Because in my view, the jobs we have are so exciting, maybe one of the most important ones and interesting ones today. So women, they just have to apply. And I'm a lawyer as a background, and I work with ventures. So that's also about complementing the teams. Even if you think you don't have the right background to work with ventures, you can complement a team. It all depends on the team today, what kind of competence they need. So give it a try and see, maybe you are successful. So, but when it comes to investing in companies, they are mainly male founders and managers in those companies. And we can encourage, like you're talking about, and ask them, and we can select those that have the more diverse team. That's a part of what we look at. But of course, we look at technologies, the market, whether the team complement each other, and competence in general. But this is one part of it, but it's an important part of it.
And I think, if I may add, being more active moderating in this session, one of the experiences that we see is that if we're actually being very vocal about what kind of candidates you want to apply, there's a change coming there as well. And I suppose that's some of the experience that you've had now, Terje, with managing to recruit more diverse.
Yeah, you have to think about who are you trying to recruit, and try to understand that. And that is what we have been working on, really, to get the right people to apply for the positions. And women and men, we are different in that way also. It's like having 10 points on your list. And if a man hits one of them, he's perfect for the job. And a woman, she needs to hit all 10. So you have to think about that, and you have to start there to try to understand, okay, how can you get the right people to apply, and then you get the right people into it. So, and then I think it helps having the more women and the more diversity you have in the organization, the more you recruit the diversity. So you have to start somewhere. And I think that's really what we have done.
There's actually an excellent startup in Denmark who actually made it easier to recruit more diverse with simply changing the language. And they had extremely high hit rates in terms of flipping the type of candidates coming in. But that was a side note. And we have not invested, so there's no conflict of interest. In terms of going back to now, we only have a couple of minutes left. Seeing these numbers and also knowing that we need to invest in a future that is more sustainable, is more inclusive. Kjersti, if you could mention a couple of things that you are most excited about at the moment in terms of industries and technologies. Would love to hear that.
Yes. So what I find so exciting, what's driving me in my role is to make a difference for the world. It sounds a bit basic, but that's what it is. When I worked as a corruption lawyer, that was a meaning. But now, working in the venture community is to find new technologies that can change the energy and also reduce carbon emissions and so on. And be a part of that, finding those technologies that I find extremely exciting. And to have that competence to do that, you need people with good technology background, with a financial background, but also a diversity of backgrounds to select those companies. And to be a part of changing the energy going forward, and what kind of technologies, and you also have to make bets. You can't just invest in one area. That's why it's difficult to point out one. You have to make diverse investments, and hopefully one of them are going to succeed.
Exciting. And Margrethe, I know you have some very exciting companies in your portfolio.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit what you're most excited about right now?
Well, we do have, I'm going on stage later today with a windmill company, which is producing electricity and is quite small. We also have a company which is a tractor who is running on electricity and is going all by itself. So we have a lot of exciting companies, and what I see is when I work with the people from the School of Entrepreneurship on the NTNU, all the young people, they're thinking, how do we make this sustainable all the time? So I think that's a good thing for the future.
So the future looks bright.
Yes, it does.
Even though there are some dark times just now. Terje, you have a lot of impact, both financially and in other measures. What are you most excited about, the change that Investinor is about to create and are seeing happening right now?
I think what I'm thinking of when you asked the question, I managed to think about it also. It's all the young, extremely smart people that we are seeing, both in our own organization and the people that we have hired, but also the people that we meet, the founders and in the companies. I'm so impressed of the quality. And it has been a change, and we're seeing a change towards more quality, and they are educated and they know what to do, and so I think that is really what is triggering me is all these clever young people. That is the future.
That is the future, and I completely agree. I have to say, one of the most exciting things about and why I chose to be in this business is the people and these incredible ideas that is going to create a better future for all of us. And very much looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your transparency, honesty, and taking a leap of faith for the future. And looking forward to speak to many of you later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we finish off this stage session, I'd like to thank all of the panelists for their great contributions. I feel I've learned a lot, and I hope you in the audience has as well. Although this stage session is finished, I hope you will be able to continue these conversations outside this room and become ambassadors of a change in investment and diversity. We now have another 20 minutes break. The next stage session will start here at 14:25, discussing the future of health. Thank you so much.